Hooday, Bengal fans. He is Eric. I am Jake. Our guy Mon is just about ready to join us. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. And there he is, repping the FC Cincinnati shirt after a big trade. Mon, I'll be honest with you, I do not follow soccer at all. I have no idea what is going on. But Mon has told me today is like the Bengals trading Joe Burrow, FC Cincinnati. Mon, what crazy trade today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm some rabid soccer fan, but I do watch them. They're fun to watch. I'm with the team in Orlando last year. He is one of their elite players. He was the MVP of the league 2 years ago, and he was disgruntled. There's some. I remember the last game of the season. He said some things at the press conference. It could be his last game in Cincinnati. Everybody just chalked it up as sour grapes because they lost, and he's just a little wounded. Guess not. I guess there was more going on, and they traded him to Dallas. I don't know the terms. I guess some cash was involved. Yeah, it's a bummer. They still got good players there, so I don't know. But it's like trading Chase or Burrow to another team. That's crazy.
That's crazy, man. What are they thinking? What are they thinking? Pete Crawley put FC Cincinnati as our only hope, and then literally within that same 30 seconds, he wrote, never mind.
That's Olivia. I think Olivia covers here. He's was the Jamie Tart of this.
Hey, Jamie Tart.
Jamie Tart comes back. Doesn't Jamie Tart come back?
I do.
He does. Spoilers. They might not have watched it.
That's the what's that show called? Don't tell me. Yes, tell me. What is that show called? That's terrible. What's the show called? The soccer show.
With Jamie Tart in it, I had the standee behind me.
Yeah, what's it called? It's the coach. Come on, somebody write. Please, somebody.
Ted Lasso. Jamie Tart.
I just wait for Jake just to throw something out there.
I kept on doing this. He's behind me, but I don't have the standee there. I don't have him.
Honestly, I think Dallas had Luka traded last week, so they're like, well, let's get this other guy named what is Luco? Close? Dallas is just falling apart.
Luciano Acosta. Yeah, I tell you that's a big trade for soccer, and we'll see what Cincinnati gets in return.
Oh man, I mean, we just cannot. The city of Cincinnati just cannot catch a break, can it? Good Lord. I mean, again, I don't follow soccer, but that's if what you're saying is true, that is definitely heartbreaking, I'm sure, for FC Cincinnati fans. Hooday to everyone out there tonight. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Guys, the offseason has officially started. We have a lot to talk about. Some awards that were given out. We haven't talked about the awards yet. And obviously we want to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. And then, Eric, we are going to discuss what can the Bengals do to get back to the Super Bowl after watching what happened on Sunday. Is that correct?
That's the meat of the show. Yep, we're going to fix the Bengals today. You guys got lots of ideas. Yep,
we're fixing them. We listen. We know that Duke Tobin is one of our biggest listeners. So Duke,
maybe he was Aaron. He hasn't been in here in a while.
Maybe he was Aaron. Yes, maybe he was Aaron. So Duke, we know you're watching. We know you're listening. You need to really focus tonight on the Bengals Pulse and listen, because we are going to fix this team and get back to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 60. Listen, there is no doubt in my mind we are going to be there. Super Bowl 60. It's got to be there. We got to be there, right? I mean, we absolutely got to be there. So, Eric, why don't you get us started? Where are we going to start at tonight?
Yeah, it's been a while since we talked, and we were going to talk the award stuff, and I didn't even have it on the list there. So we'll get into that here shortly. That's definitely something. But one of the things that came up today, so much T. Higgins talk, and then a T. Higgins interview where people were kind of freaking out, thinking that he was kind of backtracking on all the overselling of players doing what they needed to do to sign. But then we got this tweet from him earlier today. I'll throw it up on the screen real quick, or this post on X. I guess they're not tweets anymore. But nothing more than, I'm going to let y'all know first, basically telling the world that he'll break the news more than anything. You guys have any opinions on what this might mean? Is this something going to come down the pipeline soon, or is this just another one of those cryptic eyeballs type of posts? Mon, what do you think?
I think he said similar things during the season and the off season. I still have high hopes that he signs with the Bengals. I expect that. I give it a 70% chance, 75% chance. I think he's just having some fun on Twitter with that. I'm not really looking at for him to break news to us on Twitter. I think we'll find out soon enough. If the Bengals end up tagging him, it's a bad sign in my mind. With him, because I don't think he'll play on a tag. The next 2-3 weeks are going to be really, really huge. I still have high hopes that he signs, because when you're quarterback, we talked about it last week, when Joe Burrow wants somebody, Joe Burrow has a lot of say-so in that front office, more than any other quarterback in Bengal history. And I think he'll be a Bengal. I really feel good about it, and we'll find out soon enough in about 3 weeks.
Well, Pete Crawley gives us a super chat here. Shout out to Pete Crawley. Trade T and Juke to Philly for Howie Roseman. That'll do it.
Do it in a second.
What do you think, Jake? Jake, thoughts on the tweet? Thoughts on the super chat?
Listen, first on the tweet, T. Higgins is going to be a Bengal. He's going to be a Bengal. I really think that the pressure is on the front office right now. Joe Burrow is applying extreme pressure. We saw it all through Super Bowl week. Listen, Joe Burrow, we talked about this on the show. There's a Joe Burrow effect, and Joe Burrow carries so much more weight. We talked about this last week. All these other Bengal greats that have come through Cincinnati try to put pressure on the organization, and nothing came to fruition. Well, I shouldn't say nothing, but for the most part, Joe Burrow's situation is completely different. We saw that even there's a possibility of a Jamar Chase deal that's going to open up money this season to free up money for T. Higgins. I'm going to say and tell you this right now. I am 90% sure that T. Higgins will be a Bengal, and I am about 99% sure that Trey Hendrickson will be a Bengal. I think these deals are going to get done, and I think because I think the front office has to do them. I mean, I don't think there is a situation in any other circumstance where this front office could walk away and allow guys the caliber of Trey Hendrickson and T. Higgins to walk away. I honestly, and I told you this, guys, earlier, I really think a deal has been in the works here since T fired his agent. We'll find out something soon. Mon, we also found out that Trey Hendrickson, his group is meeting with the Bengals this week. So we should know more about that as well. Trey Hendrickson, we talked about T, but Trey too. I mean, this deal has got to get done as well. And it sounds like the Trey Hendrickson thing might happen pretty quickly. What do you think, Mon?
Something's going to happen. It could be a trade because, like he said on the Pat McAfee show, he wants the Bengals to win a Super Bowl. He wants to stay in Cincinnati. But if he can help the Bengals win a Super Bowl by getting picks, that's good too. The Bengals have the money to do it. They can sign all three of those guys. They can. We know they can. Look at the team that was just in the Super Bowl. 12 players on the Eagles making over $12 million a year. 12 of them making over $12 million a year. 6 of the 12 making over 20. It can happen. It's just up to the Bengals and that front office to figure things out, how to alter their approach to contract negotiations. They can do it. I just let Bengal fans know, let you guys know, I'm sort of having some weird thoughts about Trey Hendrickson. I think he could be the odd man out if there's an odd man out. Chase is a done deal. He ain't going anywhere. Higgins, I feel really good about. If one guy doesn't get signed, it could be Trey Hendrickson, and I can see the Bengals getting a couple picks for him.
Well, the big thing with Trey Hendrickson is it's his age. I mean, he's not old as far as being old is concerned, but for NFL and for Bengals history, he turned 30 this year or 31 this year. We don't typically give long-term contracts for those players. We understand that he wants a 2-year extension, which has him playing for 3 more years with the Bengals, and that'll take him to when he's 33, 34. That's what makes it seem less likely, because they're probably going to offer him a 1-year extension, and he may not be happy with that. And it was refreshing to hear that he wanted to help the Bengals win a Super Bowl, even if that means by being traded. That was kind of refreshing to hear, but at the same time, you don't want to hear that, because you don't want a guy to be even throwing trade on the table. You want it to see, you want there to be discussions out there where he wouldn't even consider that, because he knows there's a deal going to be offered to him, and it didn't seem like that was the case. Pretty interesting. Some other news that happened last week, we haven't touched on it yet, but let's try and do it quickly, because we got Super Bowl talk. We got what we're really here for. But let's talk about these crazy awards and the fact that Joe Burrow didn't get many votes for MVP. Some people had Justin, whatever his name is, Justin Herbert above him. He's not. His name doesn't pop to my head, because Khalil Herbert's the only Herbert in Cincinnati. I mean, how can you some of these people put Joe Burrow 6th in MVP voting and Jamar Chase not get one vote for offensive player, first place vote for offensive player of the year? Jake, give us a minute on your thoughts on the awards and the travesty that came down with those awards.
It's a clown show. I mean, it's a joke. The NFL is a joke. They are making a mockery of an incredible game, and we've seen this time and time again where Bengal players. Listen, we haven't even talked about Willie Anderson. I mean, how in the hell is Willie Anderson not in the Hall of Fame? It's a joke. The Hall of Fame has become a joke. The All-Pro has become a joke. The Pro Bowl has become a joke. The NFL as a whole has become a clown show. It's a circus. It is a popularity contest that obviously they're not watching any football at all. The fact that Joe Burrow did not get a vote he wasn't even on a ballot from 12 of the 50 voters is absolutely disgusting. It is disgusting. It makes it absolutely, you cannot tell me that is not biased. You can't tell me that the national media is not biased towards the Bengals or Joe Burrow or whatever. I'm not trying to get into some kind of conspiracy, but you just can't tell me that anymore. I didn't want to believe it, but with Willie not making the Hall of Fame again, which is absolutely crazy. Eric Allen made it over Willie Anderson. Are you crazy? I mean, it's just absolutely disgusting. It is disgusting that the Bengals continually get over. Jamar Chase doesn't get one first place vote. How in the hell is that possible? He is. I mean, you could argue that he is the best non-quarterback in the game, and he doesn't get one first place vote. What the hell? I mean, it's such a bad look for the NFL to continually overlook Willie. And then, they try to throw Jamar, you get FedEx Player of the Year, whatever that nonsense is. Jamar doesn't care about that crap. Then you try to give Joe Burrow Comeback Player of the Year. I mean, it's a joke. It is a joke. Everybody knew Josh Allen was going to win it because he's dating some Hollywood star and the NFL loves him. And it's a clown show, man. I can't even take any of that seriously anymore. None of it. All-Pro, Hall of Fame, the awards, the MVP, none of it. I can't take any of it seriously anymore. It's a joke, Mon.
Yeah, I mean, I really, honestly, I didn't really watch the NFL honors. I tried to stay out of it. I know a lot of people are upset about it. Obviously, Jake is. I get it that disrespect is real. I can't believe Joe Burrow, was left off some ballots, which blew me out of the
That's
water.
crazy.
And the Jamar Chase one, I think that's only happened 5 times in the league to win the Triple Crown. And for him to get the lack of votes that he got, I mean, to me, that right there is enough to show there's some type of bias against the Bengals. I said this earlier in the season. I want to win championships. I don't care about personal accolades, but still, that stuff does upset me. The Willie Anderson thing really upsets me the most.
Yeah.
Every year it's his year. It's his year. He's going to be in the top. I guess he finished in the top 7 this year, so he automatically goes to the top 15 next year. So he's going to get discussed again. I don't know what it's going to take. There's something going on in that room that, just the Bengals just aren't put on a pedestal, or they're, sort of laughed at. I don't know. Is it going to take, this may sound silly, is it going to take a Super Bowl for the Bengals in modern, like in 2025, 2026, for some of these older guys to start getting a little respect? Hey, man, he played for the Bengals, man. They're Super Bowl champs, even though they didn't play on that team. It's bonkers. It's weird. It's really weird. And, I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but there's enough data out there to sort of make you think that, hey, man, there is a bias against the Bengals.
Yes.
And on top of that, they only elected 3. They could have elected 6. A class of 3, I can understand if you've got 6 guys and you put 6 guys in and he's the 7th guy, but you elected 3 and 1 senior committee. And not only did Willie Anderson get passed over, but Ken Anderson got passed over. Just make it make sense.
It just, I guess this year the NFL Hall of Fame decided to turn themselves into Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, because it's so hard to get into the MLB Hall of Fame. And sometimes they go a whole year and nobody even gets elected. They don't have the threshold to get in. So the NFL decided to have that standard this year. Yeah, it's crazy.
Where was it the last 50 years? Come on.
Well, listen, and two guys, listen, when you look at this, this as a whole, again, I'm with you, Mon. I want to win championships. And I think Joe Burrow feels the same way. But as a whole, you look at a guy like Willie Anderson, who, again, if this were not sports writers, and listen, 3/4 of those guys that are voting have never even played football in their entire life, any kind of football. If you were to get players and coaches to vote on this, Willie Anderson would have made it 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. It's just a joke. It's disgusting. And like you said, the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Trey Hendrickson. I mean, listen, if TJ Watt or Myles Garrett would have gotten one more sack than Trey Hendrickson, they would have been Defensive Player of the Year. Instead, Patrick Surtain. Did you even see Patrick Surtain's stats? Listen, I'm not saying he's not a good player. He is one of the best corners in the league. But his statistical against Trey Hendrickson, it's not even close. It is such a joke that Trey Hendrickson didn't get defense. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
It's all about wins. It's all about wins. It's all about winning.
Got a super chat from our guy Zim. Jamar is the best non-QB in the NFL. The other players that would even be mentioned as the best are all 30-plus-year-olds. Youngest Triple Crown winner ever.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Zim. That's what I was just saying. Jamar is the best non-quarterback in the NFL, and he doesn't get one first-place vote? Listen, Saquon had a hell of a year, and I don't want it to disregard what Saquon Barkley did. But for Jamar Chase to not even get one first-place vote is disgusting, Mon.
Yeah, I agree. I really do. It's a head scratcher. I mean, it is. It's a head scratcher, and it's there's a Bengal bias there. I mean, I got really nothing else to add.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the conspiracy guy, and sometimes it sucks to be proven right, but this is clearly there's something against the Bengals, and they might have to do like they did in the Super Bowl and overcompensate and start correcting some of this stuff so that people don't think that they're biased. Because for Jamar Chase not to get a first place offensive player of the year vote, if he doesn't win it, that's fine. But no first place votes, that's just criminal.
Yeah, it is. It's unacceptable. I I just don't want them to get satisfaction for me being upset. I just, you know what? There's nothing we can do about it. It's BS. All we can do is win and just change this narrative. I feel like some of these old timers that work in the NFL, they're close to retirement. They think of the Bengals as the lost decade Bengals. And for all you younger people in there, we've said it before, that horrible 10-year stretch scarred this organization. It scarred it. It really did. They had the worst winning percentage of any team in any sport. Hockey, baseball, basketball, they had the worst winning percentage of any professional team. And that 10 years has sort of haunted this organization. I think some of these older guys that ruled the NFL keep on hanging that over the Bengals' head. It's over with, man. And we just have to win a Super Bowl, a championship, and that 10 years gets ripped up and thrown away.
Well, I agree, but I just still think you cannot disregard the number 13, right? Willie plays 16 years. He gives up 13 sacks in 16 years. He is arguably one of the best tackles to ever play in the NFL. He played for a terrible team and he played in an era of incredible edge rushers and pass rushers. It's just it's egregious. It's disgusting. Let's move on. I'm with
Juan. He did. He played during that 10-year span, and I think that scarred him.
Yeah, and he played against Hall of Fame edge rushers too. I mean, there's a lot of the people on the other side. Michael Strahan is one of them that's out there saying that that he should be in. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Let's before we get moving on, we got another super chat we don't want to forget here. We will touch on this a little bit later, but Nandan says if the Bengals get interior offensive line and a defense, 2025-26 is ours. We're going to touch on that later. I think that's definitely been Mom and Jake's opinion for a while now. Let's get into this wonderful, wonderful game that occurred on Sunday. Couldn't ask for a much better game for Bengals fans. Chiefs were shut out for most of the game until they got some trash points at the end. Eagles take it 40-22. Let's give me quick thoughts on this game, and then we'll get into how the Bengals can emulate these teams. Mon, why don't you give us your thoughts first?
Fun to watch. I didn't get to watch all of it. I was at the fire department, but what I did get to see was great. I was looking at that stat line. It's just amazing. Kansas City only had 12 first downs. They had the ball for 23 minutes. Kansas City had the ball for 23 minutes. That's it. If you think about the Bengals' worst losses over the last 2 years, we had the ball for 23, 24 minutes. We got punched in the face. Well, guess what? Kansas City was pummeled. They have a great interior offensive line. They could not hold up. They have bad tackles. They definitely couldn't hold up. 4-man pass rush by that Philadelphia Eagle defense. 4 men. They didn't blitz once. And Kansas City had no answer for them. Like I said, we are going to talk about what the Bengals need to emulate, but that front four of the Philadelphia Eagles manhandled them, pummeled them, out-physicaled them. That's how you beat them. You punch them in the face, and you go out there and you control the line of scrimmage. If you really look at Philadelphia, they didn't do anything outstanding on offense. Yeah, they had a couple nice passes. I think they had 130 yards rushing on a lot of carries, but Barkley did not explode. Kansas City was not going to let Barkley take over that game. It didn't matter. That Philadelphia defense took over that game, and it was just a beautiful thing to see. I have never seen Patrick Mahomes hit that hard in my life. He was battered. Great game for the Eagles. It was an enjoyable game. A lot of people on Twitter like, "Oh, it's a horrible Super Bowl." I loved it.
I loved it. Listen, all I want to say is, Mahomes, welcome to Joe Burrow's world, right? I mean, Mahomes was pressured, like 40% of his drops. The Eagles didn't blitz once. They rushed 4 and pressured him almost 50% of his drops. Guess what? That's a weekly occurrence for Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow deals with that crap on a weekly basis. So now you want to talk about how good Joe Burrow is? Now Now you need to, that's what really people need to take away from this is this lack of respect from Joe Burrow and what he accomplishes week in and week out. He's pressured like 48% of his drops on a regular basis, and Mahomes was 40. Dude, listen. Again, we have a special player in Joe Burrow. He is the best quarterback in the NFL. I don't care what anybody says. If Joe Burrow goes out and plays against that type of pressure, this game is much closer and probably a game where the Bengals could end up winning at the end. The Chiefs get completely destroyed. Eric, you said it earlier. I don't think the Chiefs crossed the 50-yard line till like the 9th or 10th drive. I mean, every one of their touchdowns was garbage. And you know, you look at, it was almost like, so the first penalty was thrown, the pass interference against AJ Brown, the offensive pass interference, and everybody's like, oh boy, here we go. I'm the same way. It's almost like somebody called down to the refs like, listen, you can't do that tonight. Like it's been talked about. You just made this horrible call against the Eagles. And after that, it was like a drive or two after that, Patrick Mahomes drops back and gets absolutely annihilated. He looks for a flag. There's no flag. And guys, it was almost like that was the moment the game was over because Patrick Mahomes was rattled. There was no flags being thrown, and Mahomes didn't even know what to do with himself. He looked average at best. He looked average with that kind of pass rush. And again, I don't want to take anything away. Jalen Hurts played a great football game, had the one bad pick. But guys, let me tell you right now, the Eagles defense was the MVP of that game. It was not Jalen. Jalen Hurts is going to get it because he's the quarterback. But that Eagles defense and what Fangio threw at the Chiefs was nasty, guys. That was nasty work. And we're going to talk about how hopefully the Bengals can translate that to a Super Bowl win. But this Eagles defense was disgusting. And, Mon, the one stat I looked at that I knew you would be pissed about if it were the Bengals, guys, the Kansas City Chiefs ran the ball 7 times. Seven times the whole game they ran the football. Kareem Hunt had 3 rushes. Samaje had 1. And Isaiah Pacheco had 3. Between those guys, 24 yards rushing. Patrick Mahomes was the leading rusher on his scrambles. But, man, oh, man, if you include – you can't really include the Mahomes scrambles. 7 carries. Listen to this. 7 carries for 24 yards. That is not going to win you any football games. And it was like the Chiefs completely disregarded the run game, right? I mean, they never ran the football. And how do you slow down a pass rush, Mon?
They only had 49 offensive plays, and they were playing catch up the whole game. And I hear what you're saying, but when you have 5 offensive linemen and a tight end, you should be able to stop 4 pass rushers. That is just how good the Philadelphia Eagles pass rush is. They are elite level. They've invested a lot of picks.
Yeah.
They, like I said earlier, they have 6 players making over $20 million a year.
Yes.
6 of them.
Yes.
Could be 8 or 9 because some of these guys are free agents. They're good players, and let's talk about emulating the Eagles.
Yeah, let's get into what we can learn from these teams. So let's start with the Eagles. What do the Bengals get from watching this Eagles team and seeing how this Eagles team is built? What lessons can we learn from them? Mon, you're cued it off. Why don't you go ahead and take that first?
If the Bengals are going to continue to operate the way they do with contracts, playing hardball, letting good players leave, you better bat 100. You better bet 1,000 drafting. You can't have bad draft picks. You got to hit every draft. Let me show you something. Let me tell you something. I'm looking at my other computer over here. I can't bring it over. 2021, we all know who we got, Jamar Chase, right? We drafted 10 players that year, 7 French players, 7 of them. Our two best trench players in that 2021 draft are backups. They're not even starters. Joseph Osai and Cam Sample have been the biggest producers out of those trench players. Jackson Carman don't play for us anymore. Joseph Osai played well. He's on and off. He's been hurt. Carman was a second-round pick. Osai was a third-round pick. All right. Sample was a fourth-rounder. He's been the best of the group, I think. Tyler Shelvin, supposed to be the replacement for DJ Reader, LSU teammate of Joe Burrow, lasted 1 year. They cut him. You can't have those misses. Let's talk about that Super Bowl team. You want to talk about that Super Bowl team? Same draft, Devontae Smith, great wide receiver, right? Landon Dickerson, one of the best offensive linemen in football, making over $20 million a year. A hit. How about Milton Williams? The Bengals would love to get Milton Williams in free agency this year.
Two sacks.
Guess what? Milton Williams is going to get $25 million this year in free agency.
Yep.
That's how you draft. Hits. Those you can make an argument Dickerson's top 10 offensive lineman in football. Milton Williams played like a top 10 defensive lineman this year. All right. Kenneth Gainwell is a reserve running back that's played really well for him. Some of the other guys aren't on the team anymore, but they're playing in the NFL. Tyler Shelvin for the Bengals isn't even in the NFL. We can't miss on draft picks. We can't have catastrophic bad drafts. Just because Jamar Chase was in your draft class doesn't mean it was an outstanding draft. Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. What about the other 9 guys? Yeah, McPherson was in there. That's why we're missing the playoffs. The deal is this. We saw it. Dan Horde said, I'm sorry to ramble here. Dan Horde was on Trag's show a couple days ago. Dan Horde, when he's not doing his own, he's a fan. When he's a guest on somebody else's podcast, he's just like one of us. He's a fan. He said it. The Bengals have to get better on the defensive line. We know that. But he said it. They have to get bigger. They're not big. They're not physical. We don't have big guys on that defensive line. Think about this. Tuafele, 305 pounds. B.J. Hill, 305 pounds. Rankins, 305 pounds. B.J. Hill, 311 pounds. And we had a rookie that's 325. No wonder teams are running it on us. We have to get more physical and bigger on the defensive line. And Jake, you've said it. We've all said it. Our guard play is garbage. It's got to get to an NFL level. That's where the Bengals are lacking. We got the toys, guys. We got the flashy gadgets. We need those big guys that dominate the trenches.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Mon hit it on the head. What the Eagles have done drafting the last couple years is so impressive. And again, like Mon said, the Bengals continually strike out. And again, some of these players might be good players, and we've talked about this on the show, whether it's the development of these trench players the Bengals draft. Guys, it's not like the Bengals aren't drafting guys. It's not like they're not trying to bring in and rebuild the trenches, but they're either the worst team drafting trench players or they're the worst team developing trench players. It's one of those two things, because you cannot tell me that this team is continually striking out after spending multiple picks, and not even late round picks, not even mid round picks, guys. We're talking about day 2 picks, and the Bengals are just striking out left and right. And you said it, Mon. That is why the Bengals have missed the playoffs for 2 years in a row. When you look at this Bengals offense, obviously Saquon Barkley is in a league of his own at the running back position. But the Bengals, besides running back, are probably better at every other offensive position than the Philadelphia Eagles. Tight end might be a toss-up. But receiver, the Bengals are better. And that's saying a lot, because A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are studs. Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts is even in Joe Burrow's league as far as quarterback play. But where's it different, Mon? It's different in the trenches. It's the interior of that offensive line. And when we look at the other side of the ball, guys, in the defensive interior pass rush absolutely wrecks games for teams. Playing quarterback myself and coaching that side of the ball and coaching that position, interior pressure on a quarterback is the worst possible case scenario when it comes to that. When it comes to any kind of pressure that you're bringing as a defense, that when those edge guys are coming, yes, it can wreck stuff, but you can step into the pocket still. When there's interior pass rush, there's nothing you can do about it, and it cost the Chiefs a Super Bowl, won the Eagles a Super Bowl. It cost us a Super Bowl. Aaron Donald completely wrecked us the entire game. It cost us the next year of going to the Super Bowl because Chris Jones wrecked us the entire game because of our interior offensive line and their defensive interior pass rush. The Bengals have got to fix it. They've either got to do it through free agency or they have got to start hitting on these picks because they are striking out miserably when it comes to fixing the offensive and the defensive line, Mom.
Yeah, if you look at their 2022 draft, the Eagles, Jordan Davis in the first, Cam Jurgens, these are 2-star players in the trenches. First and second round picks.
Oh, yeah.
Jacoby Dean, linebackers, had his moments for him. Let's look at the next year. Who do they get? They get Nolan Smith. Jalen Carter, first pick. Nolan Smith was a second pick. All impact players. These guys made a difference in that Super Bowl run. These guys are coming in and they're producing, putting up numbers, and they're pummeling and they're neutralizing the best teams in football. Bengals' worst loss of the year was against the Eagles.
Yes.
It was. We hung with them late in fourth quarter, but guys, if you watch that game, we're getting pushed around. And, I salute the Bengals for keeping it close for 3.5 quarters, but the Eagles are loaded, and that is a blueprint because if they can keep these players, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with for a long time.
Again, let me just say this really quick, Eric. I'm sorry for interrupting, but guys, Jalen Hurts was 17 and 20. He only had to throw the ball 22 times. That is insane. That is insane. He only had to throw the ball 22 times against the Kansas City Chiefs. That is crazy. Think about that for a minute. Why? Because that Eagles defense was insane, guys. They played out of their mind. And, the majority of those players the Eagles drafted. They drafted and developed the majority of those defensive players. They got Bond, the linebacker from the Saints. He was like a special teams guy. And he's an all-pro linebacker. And he played like it on Super Bowl Sunday. It's frustrating, guys, to watch these other teams' rookies make these huge impact in games. It really is. It's getting to the point where it is such a bad look on the Bengals front office when every other team in the NFL, even the bad teams, have rookies that make a name for themselves or rookies that are making these huge impacts. And we saw it again. We saw Cooper DeJean. The Eagles were made fun of about that pick. And the dude is a stud. And they hit on every single defensive pick, and you saw it. You saw it live on Super Bowl Sunday. It won him a Super Bowl. 17 of 22 for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. That doesn't win you Super Bowls. It doesn't.
Jake, when the Bengals had their 5-year run of going to the playoffs with Andy Dalton and Marvin Lewis, 5 consecutive years we went to the playoffs. Our defense was top 10, top 11 in football. And we had this blueprint. Bengals have never been a blitzing team under Mike Zimmer. They didn't blitz a lot. All right. They did some, don't get me wrong, the double A gap, whatever, but it was Geno Atkins, Carlos Dunlap, Michael Johnson, and Pecco. Okay. When those guys sat on the bench, Fanene came in, Wallace Gilberry came in, and all these other guys, and they would get sacks also. They were very good at getting pressure with 4 people. 7 people could drop back and make plays on the ball. That's what frustrated Patrick Mahomes. That's where Dijon, all these other guys started making plays because when you have 7 players back there, and Fangio is a great defensive coordinator, it's pressure is everything. We mentioned it with Trey Hendrickson. What he did basically as a one-man show should have made him MVP of the league. We talked about that a few minutes ago. 17 sacks. he had really no other partner. Sam Hubbard, great Bengal, all-time Bengal. He's been hurt for 2 years. It wasn't until week, 15, 14, 13 that Joseph Osai started playing a little better. But Trey Hendrickson has been doing it alone. They have got to get more production, more pass rush, more interior pass rush from that defensive front. Guys, it's pretty bare. It really is. I'm high on Jackson. I'm still high on Jenkins. I'm high on Miles Murphy. I know they're young. We have to get more out of them. It is so important that this new coaching staff, every player that played last year for the Bengals that makes the 2025 roster on defense, they have to get 15, 20, 25% better play out of each one of them. They have to. And because, like we said, they're not going to be able to replace 25 defensive players. They're going to replace 7, 8, 9, maybe 10. But a majority of that defensive roster is still going to be on that team next year. We have to get more out of them. We got to.
Well, and I think you look at, we go back and we look at 21 and we look at how good that Bengals defense was in 21. What was the difference, Mon? The difference was the interior pass rush the Bengals had in 21. They had incredible interior pass rush. I think between all the defensive tackles that year, the Bengals had like 12 or 13 sacks from just
14. They had 14 and a half because Larry Ogunjobi and BJ Hill combined for 14 and a half. Yes. See, BJ Hill is a better player when he plays half the snap, when he platoons.
Yeah.
Him and Larry Ogunjobi, they made each other better.
Yes.
But when BJ Hill had to play 250 more snaps, he wasn't as effective. We have never been I'm sorry, Jake. We've never replaced Larry O. We never have.
No, and it made everybody better, right? I mean, you could argue that 21 was Sam Hubbard's best year as a Bengal. You could argue that, right? I mean, it makes everybody better, the entire front four, when those two guys can get pressure from the inside. It makes everybody better, Mon. It's just frustrating because the Bengals, again, I'm with you. I'm high on Jackson. I'm high on Jenkins. But I don't know if those guys are 3-down guys. I don't think the Bengals have what they need inside right now, especially interior pass rush. The Bengals do not have interior pass rush at all. We know that. I mean, it's zilch. It's zero. And I don't know if those guys are 3-down players for the Bengals. I just don't know that yet. I mean, really not a big enough sample size for Jenkins and Jackson, but the Bengals have got to look at the Eagles, Eric, and they have to look at that blueprint. And again, I'm not saying this to downgrade Jalen Hurts because I think he's a good football player, but he's not even in Joe Burrow's league when it comes to quarterback play. I mean, he's not even in Joe Burrow's league. Just imagine. Look at what the Eagles did. They're like, okay, we got our franchise quarterback. What are we going to do? We're going to give him the best offensive line in football. Check. Now we're going to go out. We're going to get him weapons on the outside. Check, which the Bengals have done. Now we're going to go out and we're going to get him the best running back in football, which again, I'm high on Chase Brown. We don't need Saquon Barkley, but check. And then you know what we're going to do, Eric? After all of that, we're going to go out, Eric, and we are going to put the best defense in the NFL on the field. That's how you win. Because when it comes down to it, defense wins championships. It's always been that way, and it will always be that way. Defense wins championship. The 2 Super Bowls that Patrick Mahomes lost, when he got his ass kicked up and down the field, defense wins championships.
So before we move on to what we can learn from the Chiefs, I'll just add a couple things in there because we can see that typically you want to hit on 50% of your draft picks, and we really need to start hitting on 50%. We've been hitting on maybe 10%, maybe 8% the last few years. We got to get to hitting on that 50%, but occasionally you got to have a draft like the Chiefs had a few years ago, and you got to have a couple drafts like the Eagles have had where you're hitting on 75, 80%. That's been big, and shout out to the Eagles scouting department for getting to a point where they can hit on that. They had a few misses, but you keep taking those swings. The other things that you got to do when you take a project person, a project player, you got to hit on that. The Eagles in 2018 drafted Jordan Mailata, an Australian rules football player, never played the NFL, spent 2 years learning as an Eagle. And what is he? He's probably one of the best left tackles in the game. Last year, we had Mekhi Becton in for a visit. He sits with Frank Pollock. They go out to Jeff Ruby's. Everybody thinks that we're signing Mekhi Becton. He leaves. He signs with the Eagles. What do the Eagles do? They take the best offensive line coach in the league and they convert Mekhi Becton to guard. Man, would have been great to be able to throw Mekhi Becton in there when Kappa was struggling. They hit not just on their drafts, but they hit on their project players too. And the Bengals have to start hitting 60% of their draft picks. And any project that they take has to be a success. With that being said, what do you guys think that we can learn, good or bad, from the Chiefs? And I'll start with Mon.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Eagles' offense.
Oh, go ahead.
No. I mean, I just the thing about the Chiefs, they sort of mirror us in this way. Their tackles, offensive tackles, are really poor. Their interior offensive line is probably the best in football, one of the top three. Yes. All right. And they were exposed, those tackles. Our tackles aren't the best tackles in football, but I love Orlando Brown, and I think Mims is going to have a great future. He had up and down season. He did really well, though. Our interior line play, we've talked about it for the last 5 months, has been really poor. And, it's sort of feared how we sort of opposite mirrors, they would love to have our tackles. We would love to have their interior offensive line.
They had a chance. They let that one go.
But I just want to say this about the Eagles real quick. Their defense earned it. They won that game. I want this from our offense. I asked you guys this question last week or the week before. Would you like Joe Burrow to have 500 less passing yards and 5 less passing TDs and replace that 500 yards with 500 more rushing yards and 5 rushing TDs? I think it would have been 2 more wins for us, maybe 3. Look what they did. They controlled the ball for 36 minutes. They didn't have any explosive runs, but they kept on running the ball. They controlled the clock, and they controlled the line of scrimmage. When the Cincinnati Bengals this year were up 14 points late in the game, they can't morph into a power running game. Chase Brown isn't a power running back. He's a smoke and mirrors kind of guy. He's a great player. I'm glad he's on the team. But we need a battering ram. We need to be able to come in and run the ball efficiently, especially when we're up 10, 14 points in the second half. You know what? Because that keeps the opposing team's quarterback on the bench. We can't do that. Guys, our running game was flashy this year, and I think a lot of fans are thinking like, hey, man, we're set with the running game. No, we're not. Our running game, we have an explosive running back that can get you 15, 20 yards a pop. Well, guess what? He's going to get us 5 carries of 1.5 yards. We need to be better still. We really do. That's when you have a defense like the Cincinnati Bengals that's struggling, let's keep our defense on the bench and control the clock a little bit. Let's help them out. And I just think we need to evolve. And I think the game plan that the Eagles had was perfect. Yeah. And I want to morph into that a little bit. I really do. If Joe Burrow has to throw the ball 80 less times a season, who cares? If that's 3 more wins.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Andy Reid got completely outcoached. the Eagles coaching staff completely outcoached the Kansas City Chiefs, which is really hard to believe. I mean, listen, the Chiefs coaching staff has 2 Hall of Famers on it, as far as I'm concerned, but they got completely outcoached. And I think to answer your question about the Chiefs, Eric. I think the lesson that we have to learn is the interior offensive line. I'm not going to ever let that go. I think the Bengals have got to look at what the Chiefs did on the interior part of that offensive line. And I know they got their ass whooped on Sunday, but Mon said it. There's at least two all pros on that. We would take those guys in a heartbeat in Cincinnati. So I think the Bengals have to look at that from the Chiefs. And I think, again, like Mon said, the Chiefs ran the ball 7 times. we've seen the Bengals do that this season, and they've lost every one of those games. You cannot run the ball 7 times in an NFL football game and win. You just can't. This is not the run and shoot days of Warren Moon, who, by the way, is one of my favorite non-Bengal quarterbacks of all time. I love Warren Moon. He was an incredible player, one of the most underrated quarterbacks of all time in NFL history. He was so good. But this isn't the days of the run and shoot. You know, that this is a different time in the NFL where you can't throw the ball 50, 60 times and win. The Bengals have got to learn that. They've got to learn how to establish a run game.
Jake, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, of course.
I know for about 6 weeks now, Joe Thuney, their all-pro left guard, was getting moved out to left tackle because their tackle situation was so bad. And you know what? He did pretty well for him. He struggled in the Super Bowl, but
yeah,
as a coach, I personally think that was a terrible move because you weaken the best part of your offensive line because his backup is a good player, but isn't Joe Thuney good?
Yeah, it's great.
And I mean, are you really making your offensive line better? I would have kept that elite interior offensive line in there and just put a tight end out there to help out those tackles. I think it backfired on him.
It might have cost him the Super Bowl. Not just backfired. I mean, you cannot start playing with the offensive line the week of the Super Bowl. It's insane that you would do that. Again, I said it earlier, guys. You can compensate for bad tackles. You really can. In today's NFL, you could put a tight end, you could chip, you can if your interior offensive line is as good as the Chiefs is, you're going to win a lot of football games. And it don't matter if Joe Schmo is out there at tackle. It's insane that you would wreck the best part of your football team just to try to fix something else. You can't do that. You can't break something to fix something. It doesn't work that way. That's not how the world works, right? I mean, you can't do that, especially on the week of the Super Bowl. It's crazy.
I agree. To me, I mean, Thuney was out there for a few weeks earlier, did okay, but man, when you're playing those defensive tackles for the Eagles, keep your elite interior offensive line together and don't bring in a backup.
No, it's crazy.
And how many times have we hammered home the point that we need to fix the interior O-line, because your tackles can make mistakes as long as your quarterback sees it and has somewhere to step up. We saw in the Super Bowl that Mahomes, when he went to step up, that interior O-line was not strong, and he stepped right into guys. And shout out to Fuzzy Balls for the super chat. Thanks, Fuzzy. He says the Eagles' interior D-line dominated, and they absolutely did. Mahomes had nowhere to go because that was collapsing. You didn't have that brick wall like you always did.
And you guys saw it. You guys saw it too. I said it earlier, you know, that first time that Mahomes got hit, you almost felt like the game was over, right? I mean, that's how important it is to have that interior pass rush, because it speeds up the quarterback's clock. And you could see it with Mahomes. You know, the dude has won Super Bowls and done all this great stuff. But even a guy like that, when you have that interior pass rush, it speeds up your clock. I mean, he was throwing balls in the ground. The pick to Cooper was terrible. I mean, that was a terrible throw.
He got the yips, guys. He got the yips.
And that you have to look at that, right, Monty? You just can't look at the Eagles got 6 sacks, which is a lot. Which, by the way, let's not forget what the Titans did to the Bengals. The number 1 seed Titans did to the Bengals at home. Sacked Joe Burrow a lot more than 6, and Joe Burrow still won that football game. But it's not just the 6 sacks; it's the yips.
You know what it reminded me of? Remember Tom Brady lost to the Giants twice. I think the first time they played, they had Justin Tuck, they had Strahan. I think Strahan was on there. They had another pass rusher. They were lighting Tom Brady up. And I know he's the greatest of all time. I don't care how good you are.
Yep.
You get a little antsy and you develop the yips a little bit.
Yeah,
you got in his head. And when you hit a quarterback hard early in a game, I'm telling you, it affects him. I don't care how good he is. And Patrick Mahomes, I've never seen that look on his face. He got hit so hard. He got up. He was a little dazed. And, I mean, that's what you have to do. Clean hits, nothing dirty, good physical football. That defensive line brought it. They brought it, and they earned it.
Okay, so is there anything, that we could take from how the Chiefs are built to how the Bengals should be built? Is it only the interior offensive line, and then everything else is we want to do the exact opposite of what they did?
They got a great defense. They know how to draft. They when we beat them in that AFC Championship game to go to Super Bowl 56, that next draft, McDuffie, all those guys, they drafted to beat the Cincinnati Bengals.
They did.
They did. They got all these defensive backs. They kept on reinforcing the trenches. They got Chris Jones, who's a Hall of Famer, Dana. They got Karlaftis. They have a lot of good players. That defense was playing well. Kansas City's defense played well. They did. And for being on the field almost 37 minutes, they did. They were out there. They were beat up. They have a good defense. I'm going to tell you something about the Chiefs. This is not rocket science. It's Captain Obvious comment. You can make an argument. I know he was outcoached, but Andy Reid, Spagnuolo, amazing coaching staff, really top level, top shelf. And I don't think I think we have great coaches on the Cincinnati Bengals, but we're not at that level.
I think the Bengals can learn a lot more from the Eagles and the Chiefs. I think the Bengals are better than the Chiefs. I really do. I mean, I know they beat us, but that was such a BS nonsense ending to a football game. And the Bengals team wasn't even really that good last year defensively, and the Bengals still should have beat the Chiefs. I don't think we can learn much from the Chiefs. I think we can learn a lot from what the Eagles do. And by the way, I want to give Curtis a shout out. I was trying to it was either 7 or 9 that Joe was sacked against the Titans, and Curtis throws out 9 times. I think that's a Ferris Bueller shout out. Curtis, if I'm right, let me know, but I love it if it is. A little throwback to Ferris Bueller, one of my favorite movies of all time.
I like what Cornell said too. Yeah, Pat was punch drunk. He was like one of those boxers. He was a
guys. When's the last time you saw Patrick Mahomes walk off the field with that look of defeat? And it was in the first quarter. I mean, it was in the first quarter. We're not talking about the fourth quarter. He had more passion in the fourth quarter. He got hit in the first quarter like this thing's over.
Knew. Hey, listen, do you remember when the Bengals beat the Bills in the divisional playoff game a couple years ago in the snow? Kyle Brandt's a big Bills fan. He was on NFL Network the next day, and he was upset that his Bills lost to the Bengals. But he said that I was sitting next to a former Bills player, and when the Bengals scored that quick, that Bills player looked at us. He goes, "Buddy, we're in trouble today." Yeah. Well, you know what? The Chief players were on the sideline after the first half. They're like, "We're in trouble, guys." They know the Eagles were ready to play, and they knew. I think they knew at halftime it wasn't their seat. It wasn't their Super Bowl.
No.
Yeah. So what I hear from this, or what I take away from this, is the only thing we can learn from the Kansas City Chiefs is fix the interior offensive line, but do not do it at the expense of your tackles. You need 5 strong offensive linemen. I'm all in. I want to play all rookies on defense, even if you got to trade Trey. Spend $100 million on your offensive line. Spend $80 million, whatever it might be. Put money into the offensive line. Put money into Jamar, T, Gesicki. Go out there, and if Joe Burrow is upright and gets hit, averages 1 sack a game, it's Super Bowl bound. And you do it by spend the money now on the offensive line, lean into young players. I think it was Dan Hord's interview on Trag's podcast just earlier this week, where he mentioned that Lou hated to play young players. And that was horrible for us. And because of that, we don't know what we have in Myles Murphy. We don't know what we have in Jenkins and McKinley Jackson. We think we've got good players, but we have no idea because he wouldn't go out there and play them. And that's why the shift to Golden was needed, because Golden is all about young players. I mean, he's just coming from a college program that was playing freshmen out there. So I think that if nothing else, the shift away from that refusal to play the young guys is going to be needed, because that money's going to go to offense, and it should be. And I think that that's the blueprint to get back to the Super Bowl. I think you don't have to fix the defense and the offense. Fix the offensive line, defense get a little bit better, and that's all we need. Now, I know we want it all, but I think that's all we need.
Well, I still think you. I mean, again, I said it earlier. I hear what you're saying, and I'm with you. The Bengals have got to fix the offensive line, but Eric, you have got to have a better defense than below average. Like, you have got to have a defense that can get people off the field, or your elite offense is never going to see the field.
So let me throw this at both of you.
Yeah.
It's one offseason. It's hard to fix it both.
Yeah.
You could fix the offensive line and the defense gets 10% better, or you can fix the defense and the offensive line gets 10% better. Which one are you taking, Vaughn?
I'm taking the offensive line, because
Okay.
you got your franchise. You got to protect them.
So you're telling me the defense, how much better is the defense?
So offensive line gets 50% better. Defensive line gets 10% better, or flip it. Defense gets 50% better. Offensive line gets 10% better.
Oh, I'm taking the defense. If you're telling me the defense gets 50% better, I am taking the defense, because listen, guys, I'm with you, and I agree about protecting our franchise. But if our defense is that much better, the Cincinnati Bengals they're going to win a Super Bowl. If you're telling me the offensive line gets pit and we have to run out a defense that's only 10% better than what we saw this year, we're not going to a Super Bowl, guys. Our defense was bottom. It was 32nd at one point.
If our offensive line gets 50% better, our defense will be more than 10% better by default, because we're going to control the ball. We're going to run the ball better. It's going to help our defense dramatically. I just want to talk about the offensive line real quick. I remember Paul Dehner 2 years ago was talking to Jay Morrison. They were talking to some people from other teams and their philosophy on the offensive line. You have 5 guys. We know that. We all know. We're all football fans. You can't have 5 all-pros on your offensive line. You can't afford them. You can't spend $25 million per position. But your weakest link on the offensive line cannot be a guy, because teams are going to target your weakest offensive lineman. The defensive coordinators are going to go, hey, go after that right guard, go after that left guard. If they are really bad players, lower tier, you're dead. Your weakest link has to be a football player. He has to be decent. Maybe not elite, but he has to be a decent player. I think that's what the problem with the Bengals are. I think our 2 weakest links, due to injuries and not developing, are that bad that teams are like, hey, man, just target these guys. They just don't have it. We saw it with our own eyes. All right? We have to get better there, because opposing defenses see it. If Mon, the fireman from Florida, can see it, what's Spagnuolo and all these other guys going to see? Yeah. And we just have to get better. And I'm not just saying throw a body in there that's 5% better. We have to bring in really good players to finally fix that.
Let me ask you guys something just real quick. I don't want to extend on this, but I got to ask you this. I've been thinking about the whole show. What was better about Super Bowl Sunday? I'm going to give you 3, and I want you to tell me what your favorite thing was. Either 1, that the Chiefs got absolutely destroyed, okay? Just absolutely decimated. 2, that Patrick Mahomes got beat up and there were no egregious penalties against the Eagles except for the first one. Or 3, that Kenny Pickett took Super Bowl snaps before Lamar Jackson. Because that's my favorite. My favorite thing about Sunday was that Kenny Pickett took snaps in the Super Bowl before the NFL's golden boy, Josh Allen, and the regular season hero, Lamar Jackson. That is my favorite thing that happened on Sunday.
Yeah,
I don't want to troll fan bases. I'm trying to hold off. I'm trying to hold off from trolling him, but that's a good one. That is a very good one, and I'm glad he got to come in because everybody was throwing that out there. I did like to see. I like seeing Kansas City humble, buddy. There.
Oh, dude, I was so happy. I was so happy.
My favorite thing was, we hate on the Chiefs. Oftentimes people hate greatness. People hated Brady, and Belichick for all the Super Bowls they won. I respected Brady, and I didn't mind seeing them winning because Brady would go out there and win, but he wouldn't whine. He wouldn't get up in the ref's face. He would yell at him from time to time. But the thing that's the most just gets on my nerves is how Mahomes is constantly whining at the refs, going up to Josh Allen and telling him, instead of congratulating him after the game, telling him it was the worst call he's ever seen. Well, he apparently has never watched a Chiefs game, but that is what, if they didn't do that, if they weren't so whiny when it didn't go their way, I would not have a problem with them winning 3 straight or them having a dynasty. But the fact that they constantly do that. So to me, the greatest part of the game was all this talk before 3P, you're going to be the greatest. Brady never did this, blah, 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 blah. All of that going down while Tom Brady is calling his first Super Bowl, and you could hear the giddiness in his voice. You called a really good game, but you could just hear the excitement when it's like, "Oh, I wouldn't have made that throw if I was you."
You
but,
could. You're right. You could. You know what I forgot too? I forgot too, Mon Eric? How about Taylor Swift getting absolutely booed by the entire stadium? Listen, she's going to have to break up with Kelsey, or she's going to lose her entire fan base because everyone hates her now that she's associated with the Chiefs. And I don't know if you guys saw this. I don't know who it was on Twitter that first did it, but I got to tell you guys, it was one of the best memes I have seen in the last decade. Did you guys ever see Talladega Nights with Will Ferrell? Yeah. I mean, it's a classic, right? Absolute classic. So you remember when
last?
Yeah. So you remember when Will Ferrell loses to what's his name? The guy that does all the movies with him. The guy that's in Talladega Nights. His shake and bake. I can't remember what the guy's name is.
Cal Naughton.
Do you remember when he loses to him and then he comes home that night and he's already like with the wife and the kids are playing board games. He's got like his face like replacing Will Ferrell's on the wall. Do you guys remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So somebody put up a meme that said tonight when Travis Kelce gets home, and it was that same shot. But it was Cooper DeJean and Taylor Swift. And Travis Kelce comes home, and Cooper DeJean's like, "Hey, man, I want you to be in my wedding."
Yeah.
Oh, that was so great. Whoever did that was classic.
I love the meme. They took a picture. I guess he had this really 70s suit on. Kelce did going into the Super Bowl, and they said he looked like the 4th member of the Bee Gees.
Yeah.
He just. I don't, man. You know what? I'm just glad they got humbled. You could tell. There was rumors going around they were partying really hard down there. I don't know. I'm glad the Eagles won. I just want to ask you guys a question. Do you think Duke Tobin was watching that game, him and his scouts, and they look at it and they say, golly, man, I wish we could have one of those guys on their defensive line, or I wish we could have one of those guys on their interior offensive line. I mean, if you look at the hit rate of the Eagles draft picks, I mean, how does Duke Tobin not sit there and go, man, and we're doing everything right? I mean, it's just amazing, these players that they have. And they're not, they have top 10 picks, the Eagles do on the defensive line. Yeah, they should be stars. But they also have 2nd, 3rd, 4th round picks that are playing lights out. I don't know, man.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's no way you could tell me that Duke did not watch that game and say, every single Bengal fan, especially my favorite podcast, the Bengals Pulse, says this week after week after week after week. And here I am watching it live, that the interior offensive line and the interior defensive line is going to win this team a Super Bowl. We have a better quarterback. We have better receivers. We have overall much more talent when it comes to skill players. And we can't make the playoffs because of these two weaknesses, Mon. And you said it. not only are they weaknesses for the Bengals, they are bottom 3 in the NFL. The Bengals interior defensive line and the Bengals interior offensive line is bottom 3 in the NFL, maybe the bottom. You're not going to win football game. We're not going to see a Super Bowl again until the Bengals fix those two things.
And go.
Well,
I agree.
That's a good segue. That we got over 500 people watching here.
Thank you guys so much.
We are going to talk how they fix that on March 10th. We're going to talk that on Thursday. We're going to go into some of these guys that are out there. And March 10th is when the Bengals start to fix it. And we believe that they're going to fix it. And the Bengals Pulse, Bengals may not have that many scouts out there, but you know what? They've got 3 more here, and we'll pull in a 4th, we'll pull in a 5th, we'll pull in a 6th. Whatever we got to do, all Duke has to do is listen to the Bengals Pulse on his way into work on Friday, listen to it on iTunes, and he's going to get the blueprint for fixing the offensive line, the defensive line. Take a swing. Listen to the Pulse. You got it. We're going to do it.
Absolutely.
Hey, real quick. Hey, Wyatt, send me a message if you follow me on Twitter. I'd love to give you some advice, Mr. Brown. He's asking me about the fire service. So, I don't want to talk about it on the show, but by all means, send me a message.
Oh, cool. I didn't even see that. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, we are all very thankful for what Mon does. And except for the fact that he will not grow his mustache back. We are not thankful for that.
It's coming. It's coming.
Oh, that's big.
I'm starting to put a little bit of product in my hair.
You just dropped the biggest news of the night, and we're about to wrap up the show. What? Who does that?
I was impressed with the Kelsey look, so I'm trying to get the Kelsey.
Oh, you're gonna get the big glasses. Listen, did you consult Olivia first? Because I think Olivia needs to chime in. If she's okay with the look, then yes. If not, don't do it.
She is my fashion coordinator. It's all good, but
yeah, if you just consult your daughter first, because I don't know.
Olivia.
We'll have a bonus episode of the Pulse to talk about fashion. Okay.
Don't put that on Olivia.
Listen, our fashion is typically orange and black everywhere. Even your FC Cincinnati shirt's got orange.
Somebody told me once we went out to dinner with some friends, and the wife of my friend goes, "Is everything you wear have a sports logo on it?" I'm like, I almost threw my water on her. Like, excuse me? Yeah. So what if it does? I like sports.
Well, hey, like you said, I'm excited. I'm excited about March 10th. It is Christmas in springtime. We have a lot more shows though to do before we get to that day. And obviously, after that mock draft, we got so much content coming for you guys. We know it's the off season, but thank you guys so much for joining us. We love talking to you guys every week, and we look forward to talking about hopefully some of these re-signings coming up, free agency, the draft, getting you ready all the way up until Bengals training camp. It's going to be an exciting offseason. As long as the Bengals do what we asked them to do, Duke Tobin, get it done, Duke. All right, guys. That is another.
Before we get out of here, and Cornell, yes, we need Mon to grow the Freddie Mercury mustache back so that we can get back and grab another one of these championship rings. They're so beautiful.
Cornell, I don't think it was Freddie Mercury. Come on. I mean, that's a fireman's mustache. I mean, I like Freddie Mercury.
Well, no, but on top of that, we're going to have Mon, the myth, the legend, sing "We Are the Champions" when this all happens.
Yes.
And I'll news.
I'll do it in Arabic and English. I'll get it done.
Let's go.
All right.
I don't want to hear Mon sing in any language, to be honest with you. I don't want to hear it in any language.
Okay, so that's it. Bengals winning the Super Bowl. He's singing to celebrate and to punish you. Wonderful.
Eric, you obviously have not heard Mon sing yet. If
the Bengals win the Super Bowl, it'll be the most beautiful thing that we ever heard.
Guys, when I retire, I'm going to have a beard down to here, okay?
Oh, okay.
I believe that. I actually believe that. All right, guys, that is another edition of the Bengals Pulse. If you like this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you check us out on all the awesome podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, As always, he wants them to connect the sideburns. That's the best mustache. As always, guys, if you like this podcast, make sure you give us that 5-star review. We very much appreciate that. And make sure you check out all the awesome podcasts right here on the Cincinnati Podcast Network. Follow Mon on Twitter at The Fire Mon. Follow me on Twitter at Coach Jake Owens 9. Follow Eric on Twitter at eFlash with 2 H's 88. Follow the Cincinnati Podcast on Twitter at Cincinnati Pod. And follow the Bengals Pulse on Twitter. Come on, guys, please follow us on Twitter at Bengals_Pulse9. On Instagram, the same without the at Bengals_Pulse9. And as always, like I said, guys, make sure you check out all the awesome podcasts right here on the Cincinnati Podcast Network. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. We love you. We appreciate you. Hooday to all of you out there. He is Mon. He is Eric. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse. Hooday, Bengal fans. We
love you. Thanks.